Hi everybody. I was having control issues. It was telling me don't rotate your phone. And I knew that was just going to be a recipe for disaster. So hope you're still with us. Brought some great new designs. Hopefully that'll make up for it. So we're really excited to show you some of the beautiful Spin FX 11. It's one of my favorite Spin FX. Of course, they're all my favorite, but I love the shape on this one, and we're going to be sharing you some amazing designs and different ways that you can use it, as always, beyond the basics. So I do have the entire Spin FX 11 set. So I'll put that up on the screen really quick. And thank God honey's here, keeping me from stressing out and finding things. So he'll be helping us a little bit today as well. Hi, good morning from Northern Australia. So happy that you could make it. Hi, Louise. Hi, Linda. Coventry, UK. Hello, Miss Janice. Joanne from Florida. So cool. People talk about the internet and all of its problems, but the one cool thing is it allows people from vastly different places and culture groups to all share in and just enjoy something together. And I think that is a pretty unique and special opportunity that we have. So, okay, well, we have a lot of people on, so hopefully they found us by now since I was tap dancing earlier. And this is the Spin FX 11. And you can see right away it's got a very narrow point on one side. It's very elongated, and we're going to use that to our advantage. We're literally going to think about what the space relationships are and how they can work for us in our designs. So really, that is probably the number one aspect that we're going to key on terms of the learning objectives for today is how do you make a template work if it isn't the size that you want? Or how can you think about adapting it to make it fit in a space that is different than maybe its measurements are created for? And so that'll be some of the biggest things that we're going to focus on today. As always, we start at the beginning. We're going to do a design that is essentially the more regular use of this template, but as always, I'm going to put my own spin on it because it is a Spin FX, so we got to spin it around a little bit. So the size that I'm going to use for this first one is the 7.5? No, all of them. The first one. The size I'm going to use is my crosshair square, and the size of the block is a 9-inch block. So let me pull it up. We'll mark it on camera because I want to show you how I decided what size block that I could do it in. All right, let's put this up here. Smooth it out. It's kind of wrinkly. Let's see if we can come out just a little bit and give us a little bit more room here so we could see more of it as we work for a minute. So it'll take us a few minutes to mark this, and I want to talk about it. So the largest Spin FX that is in the set is 11.5 inches. Okay, we all know that. We know that that is designed to fit in a 12-inch block. So I wanted to make the biggest design I could, but I wanted to use it on the diagonal. Okay, I could do this in the regular 12-inch block, but what that means is on the 12-inch block, it's going to fill this area, which leaves more of a gap around this part, right? But if I change the math a little bit and I fit it onto essentially the 12-inch diagonal, then it's going to fill a little differently. It's going to end up essentially coming all the way out in this corner, which is the diagonal here, and that leaves us the opportunity to do something else in the short leg right here. So I figured out that a 12-inch diagonal is approximately an 8.5-inch square. If this square was 8.5 inches, then this center diagonal right here is about 12 inches, give or take, right? So I know that my 11.5-inch Spin FX is going to fit right in here. And if you don't want to do the math, all you have to do is just stick it on there. This is my center dot, so just line it up, and I'll line the center up, and right there, I'll turn it this way so you can see better, I already know that this is going to fit. There's the line of my square. So right in the diagonal, I know that as the largest size, this can fit in there. So if you want to do the math, I'm going to have Honey type it in. If you want to know what size box in order to make the diagonal of your Spinifex fit, it's whatever this size is, like this is 11.5, so I just use 12, and then you're just going to divide that by 1.414. That's it. That tells me what this shorter leg is. If this is the diagonal right here, this is the shorter leg of a right triangle. So if I just divide that by 1.414, that's how big of a square that I need. So for me, and if you don't want to do the math, just 9 inches. That's it. It'll fit for sure. The biggest Spinifex will fit in a 9-inch square along the diagonal. So I am not working on my usual machine. I was teaching the BSR stitch regulator class this week, and I was just too exhausted to try to lift this thing up and switch back. So I do have several machines, and I like them all. I will comment on that really fast. I know that this is not a sales pitch, right? People ask me all the time, oh, you know, what machine are you using? My machine doesn't make me better. A good machine is important. I won't lie. I love my machines. I think they're great, but they're not going to make you better. Your practice, your skill, your movement is going to make you better. So what is really important, more important than me telling you what I have, is for you to go and try things for yourself. Some person out there created this machine and they think a certain way, and their team processes information a certain way. And maybe they don't think like you, and maybe they do. So maybe this machine will seem really great to you, and maybe it won't. So I think it is very important when you are searching for a new machine that you don't just go to the closest person. And that might be important. You might need that facilitation. A shop supporting you is very important. So that could make a big difference. But it's also really important that you test out the machine and see that it makes sense to you, that the buttons are in the right place, that it seems more intuitive to you. So that's what I want you to do. If you're going to ask me, that's what I'm going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you what I'm doing. But the machine I'm working on today is the Bernina 590, and it is awesome. So let's go ahead and mark really quick. We do need our crosshair square marking. That's what we were talking about earlier. So let me grab mine. I am using my big one today, my really big one. Why is that? I want to be able to mark these lines pretty much all the way out to the edge. So let me show you. Anytime that I have a square that is within these sizes, I can literally line up this white line right here on my box. These corners right here should intersect my square perfectly if my square actually is square. So I'll fudge mine a little bit. It might be a little bit off. And let's put those lines in. And we are going to use all 8 of them today. Even though we just talked about the diagonal, we're going to put a cute little embellishment on the short legs too, because we can. I always test my designs before I get on camera, but I always hope that and pray that they work out. Do you guys have any problems like that? That's what your stitching line discs are so useful for, right? So that you can practice that ahead of time. Let's see, do I have one more line I need to mark? Oh, he shifted just a tiny bit, darn it. Oh, it'll probably be fine. With the Spinifex, it'll still work out. Okay, so let's put our center dot in and let's get sewing. I did put my stable tape grips on all of my rulers. Honey helped me. I had to flip some of the little stable tapes over because I put some of them on backwards, which is so irritating. Make sure that you put them on the correct side, right? This is the back. When I look at this and I can see these words backwards, that is the back, right? So this one right here, he's on the wrong side. Right? Just take him off really gently. You can just kind of roll that up a little bit. If they're old, they won't peel off, but if they're new, they probably will. So just gently peel that up. just make sure they're on the correct side, because otherwise it's a problem. Okay, there, they're all on the back side, and we're ready to go. I want to start with the little itty bitty cutest baby one right there. Look how cute that is, right? Adorable. Okay, so let's start with this one, putting our needle right in the center, just like we always do. Let's get in just a little closer so you guys can see better. That's a lot of talking, right? I haven't even sewn anything yet. Get going. All right, needle down, pick up my bobbin thread. We always want that on the top. This design has the potential to have a lot of thread building up in the center. So if you want to use maybe a little bit lighter weight thread, that might be a good idea. I'm not. This is a 40 weight thread, but that is just something that I noticed. I noticed that it's got a lot of thread building up. So we're going to show you the version I practiced, and then we're also going to do something where we do a little bit less stitching to kind of make the density a little bit lighter because it's really, really full. Okay, when we do this inner one, I want to use this rounder edge with this skinny neck going towards the outside, and we're going to put these on the diagonal, right? So right off the bat, those are the first ones. We're doing all 4 of these, and then we'll switch it out. Okay? Oh, my thread is on top of my foot. That's really annoying. Let's just kind of scoot this over. I don't want him dragging, so we'll just scoot him out of the way for the moment. Okay, and then see if I can cut him right now and get him out of there. He's already getting stitched in, which is so annoying. All right, there we go. Right back to that center position. This is going to be important. Check inside that opening. Make sure he's in the center each time. Before you sew another lobe on there, make sure that you've got him seated nice and smooth. Check all of these lines and get him right on the center. So always this round one for the first lobe. Okay, and then right here, we're just going to look back there, and we're checking right here so that we're right on the center. And I'm just kind of looking back behind there and making sure I can get him aligned. Hopefully I'm right on there. There we are. Good. Okay, so let's sew all of these real quick. I do put the stable tape grips on these, essentially on the 4 corners, and note that they are really close to the edge of the template. Okay, so again, I want to get them all lined up on that crosshair line and stitch this in. So there's a tiny overlap right at the, where the 2 petals overlap. It's not very big, but we are going to be using that. So that intersection where those 2 overlap, that's where we're going to add some elements to our design when we get a little further along. All right, so this is the 3, and what we're going to do is we're going to skip one of each size. So the next size up in this is the 5.5, so we're going to skip that one and go to the 7.5. And you can do every single one of them. I did, when I did my sample, I did all of them in this design. But what happened is then it's pretty busy, you know, it's pretty dense. So I was thinking that maybe if we just spaced it a little bit better, then we can avoid some of that density and really having too much thread. I'll show you the other one when we get done, and then you guys can decide what you like better. Okay, we're going to cut these because I don't want to have to keep worrying about them now everywhere. There we go. Get those out of there. Okay, now the key on this design is we are going to be switching. All of the now succeeding ones are going to have this round part go to the outside. Here's my thought on this, right? This skinny neck, these are going to flare out and they're going to get wider as we go towards the outside of the block. But right here, these little round parts are going to kind of trap the little skinny neck right there. So that's the design that I decided on.
You want to check your focus?
It's not focus, it's feed. Oh yeah, so they're saying the internet feed is not very good. So it's really not giving a very clear picture. Oh, that's really annoying. Is that any better, you guys? I'm trying to see if we can improve the picture a little bit. I don't think it's my camera though. I think it is just the internet feed. Yeah. So I'm just going to keep going and hopefully it'll just improve of its own accord. Okay. Yeah. So I don't know that it'll be better because it's still recording just with the poor internet. So we'll see what happens, but I'm just going to go for it. So just going back to where we are, I'm still holding on to this and we're just going to sew this one all the way back to the center. Okay. And we're going to sew each one of these on the diagonal. So 4 lobes, not too many. You're going to get this really cute overlap here. And what's happening now is because this widens out, we talked about how this part is bigger. So as we add successive pieces, it's going to widen out, widen out, widen out to fill in this section. So that's the design decision. So I consciously have decided that what I was doing was something that could fill up that quadrant as we go. Okay, and then looking at the line on the back, trying to get it centered. I can't really stand up here and do it because I got so much equipment in the way, but here we go. We'll just get this one going. Okay, and then one more. So now we've come back to the center of this design already 8 times. Okay, so know that you're going to have a lot of buildup in the center. This is not really a design that you want to do if you have a pieced center right there. It's just really too complicated and too many stitches to be going back into that center if you have a really bulky seam right there. Okay, so if you had an open space and you wanted to put a really big motif in there, then this is for that purpose. So like if you had, some open blocks, like a 9-inch open block, and you were doing some kind of lattice or something, then this is going to be good for that. So this was the 7.5. We're going to skip the 9.5 and we're going to go right to the 11.5. Big and beautiful. I love it. It's huge. Look at that. Okay, so if it's 11.5, this is 5 3/4 from end to end, just for you guys' information if you want to hold on to that. So Linda, I'm going to answer your question. Linda Shell asked me that she noticed that this has a spring on the foot. Okay, let's talk about that for 1 second before we sew. The purpose of this spring is not a spring action foot like a free motion foot. The function of this spring is that if my needle is up and my presser foot is in the up position, like that. When I bring my needle down, that spring allows the foot to descend out of the way of the needle bar. See that? So its function has nothing to do with its stitch potential. It only has to do with protecting this needle bar and keeping it out of the way of the foot. So this doesn't do anything as far as your stitch action. Berninas have a small hopping action, very minute. You'll see that the foot kind of has a little motion up and down like that. I can still use low shank rulers on this. These are actually long arm. You can see that they're really thick. See how fat they are? So this foot has a lot of flexibility. If you do have a Bernina machine, I encourage you to set your presser foot pressure at around 25 or so. It's just something that you can just change the number, and it's really easy. Then you can just sew with that, because that'll lower the foot or raise it. There's one other feature. I'm actually going to raise my foot, and I'll show you one more thing. Right here, this brass dial, if I turn this dial, you'll see right here that the foot moves up and down, right? So if I want it to go back down, I'll just turn the dial. And this is something then you can adjust the height of your foot pretty easily without any tools. So that is something that is very useful, very functional. Let's go ahead and set up and do this last one here. All right, get this in. All right, so we're going to sew one more, and notice how this fits very nicely. Make sure at this point that you actually look right here and see how this stitch right there is touching this opening evenly. Like, don't make it so it's a little bit more on one side. If your line, isn't perfectly seated, now you actually want to follow the lines that are stitched on there, because that chalk line is going to go away. It's more important that this design is seated right on that previous one. Okay, so let's go ahead, let's sew. One of the unique things about these Spinifex is that they will overlap. So right now you can see that cut into the one before it, and I love it. I think it looks awesome. So because the template's so big, sometimes it's more convenient to adjust your hand position rather than trying to hold it all at once. Okay, so we're back in the center, and it's looking pretty awesome. So if you are a template person, this could be a really fun design to do with template, because there's a lot of fun overlap potential for this. See right here, if I'm lined right up on the chalk line, I'll show you. I'm actually on the chalk line right now. Notice how this is not evenly on this design in here. It's a little bit further over, and it's on the line over here. So I want to kind of space it better so that it's right in the middle, even if the chalk line isn't perfect. Okay? Keeping the edge of your foot connected right against your template, actively changing directions here. And now, we're almost out of camera view, sorry. Glad I saw that before I sewed the whole thing. So adjust my hand position, and then let's go ahead and sew right back to the beginning. Okay, so because I'm using the Spinifex 11, that means that you can't use the Spinifex number 9, right? Or the 15, or the 8. No, yes you can. Do whatever you want. Use what you have. So absolutely you can try this same contraption with any Spinifex that you have, okay? So I just want you to know that you have that freedom. Feel like you can just play with what you have, and you can create your own unique design, but you can use some of the same fundamentals. So the key thing is that this is much wider on one side than the other. So if I have some Spinifex where that's more symmetrical, that it's like I think the number 10 and the number 3 are kind of like a leaf shape, they're not going to be as effective at getting you this narrow neck here and something wider out here. You can still do it. It is going to give a different look, but it may not fill up as well out on the corners of the block. So that's something for you to think about as you're doing your design, just so that you know that's the big difference here. This one's so skinny here, and you get a lot more width on the outside. Okay? Nice and easy, just come right back to the center. Try to hold your ruler really steady so you get a nice clean connection right at the point. So this one is the last one on this side. And then we'll start doing those cute little embellishments with the baby like I told you about. So I'm looking right here. I'm going to get it centered so I have the same amount of space right here where it's touching, even though that isn't on my chalk line. Actively pull that fabric right towards me. At this point, I'm pulling the whole thing towards me, but just keeping the foot touching. You always want to pull your sandwich opposite of the direction that you want to sew. So if I want to sew that way, I'm going to be pulling it towards me in order to get back to that center position. All right, let's take it off and we'll show you what we got. Ooh, love it. And because now this is wider, notice how we don't have a lot of space right here. So this kind of fills this up in a balanced way. If we had just filled with this shorter leg right here, you're going to have a much bigger gap around this area of the block. So that's just something to think about. That allows you to get more sizes out of it. What is the largest quilt piece? What was the question? Somebody asked what was the largest?
What's the largest quilt piece you use so it's still easy to pull? That's Carolyn.
Carolyn, so I have quilted a queen size on a domestic machine, but it's hard. It is hard. That is not easy. So the thing is that as you get better, I think people think that rulers are going to make the bulk and weight of a quilt go away. They can't. They can't. You still have to have all the things that make it easy. You've got to have it up on the flat surface. You've got to bunch the bulk up around the needle, create like a pooling like this. You got to put a pillow in your lap so the quilt doesn't drop down into your lap. If you have a weightless quilter or a suspension system of some kind, that is super helpful. You've got to have a glider on. The quilt weight is a big thing, and it does make it difficult. And then, don't quilt for 5 hours either, right? Quilt in 15-minute increments. That is something that is going to make that a little bit more accessible. Quilting a large quilt on a domestic machine is a skill and a challenge. So I would say a generous lap or a twin, I feel comfortable doing that on a domestic machine. So, okay, there you go. And I still have to do all those management things. Let's put our key back in, okay? And let's show you what I want to do now. I'm going to key in really quick on this section right here. This is that tiny little overlap right there. If I am not comfortable sewing to this point, I can put the ruler back on. So let's just go ahead and do that. That way people can see that. This is the 3.5. It's the small one. And remember that we have this piece around the foot, so we're going to have to put the key back on. If it was on this side, maybe we could travel a little bit, but right there we can't. We have to have the key in there in order to have the foot rest in the center. All right, here we go. Now, at the center right there, we have this round edge. We have it like this right here. On this area, what I want to do is I want to flange it out. like this. I want this wider part. So we want the wider part to stick out. So you're going to put that little narrow neck around the foot. But before we do that, we want to get to that intersection. So line it up, and we're going to travel until the needle is right where those two intersect on this line. Not over there where we sewed before, but we want to get to this short leg of the crosshair. So we're just going to try to follow right along until I get our needle right in the center. Once I'm there, I'm going to turn it so I have this wide part right in the center. Notice how with the design that we have, it's not going to cut in to this at all. Even though I can see those stitch lines, they're not within that 1/4 inch. So let me just kind of show you up close a little bit. Do you see that? So there's no way we're going to be cutting into them with the existing stitch. You can even test that right there by putting that on there, right? So if I put the 5.5 inch, it does kind of stick out a little bit more. It'll still do it. Remember that we skipped. This is the 3 and this is the 7. The 5 will actually cut in a little bit more, but it'll still fit on there if you want it to. So I'm balanced between these two spaces, and let's sew this in. And we're only going to sew one part, half of it, and then we're going to scoop this up on the line, and we'll sew right back to where we are now. Okay. So just stay there, and then you're going to scoot that down, and we're going to sew that next part at the bottom. Okay. Should I turn it around? I'll show you just to get you aligned. Right here, I want to be right where I left off. This center line needs to be lined up right where we left off stitching. So visually, this white line, I'm lining it up with the stitch line in order to make that piece of the design clean. Okay, now we sewed out, and we have to start traveling around. So flip it over. We're going to come back to the center and out. We're not going to stitch around this part because this part's already pretty and clean, and we don't want to make a mess out of it. There's already so much thread towards the center that we don't care. So I'm aligning it right there. Going to get this aligned right in the center, and then I'm just going to stitch right back down that side to get back to the center. Okay, and then again, turn it this way so we can get up to this center position right there. And I think I need one more stitch to get aligned. There's already so many stitches in there, who cares, right? So I'm right at the center, flip it over, and line it up, and we're going to check that spacing right there between those two designs, just like that, and just sew one side. And then just scoot up and sew this whole thing. If you feel comfortable traveling without the ruler, then you can definitely do that here. There's no problem with that. Like as you're getting back to the center down here, if you'd rather just travel without the ruler, that's okay too. So right here, I want to line this center line up right where I left off there so that I can stitch right back in to my other design. Right in the middle, then flip it again, and we have to travel out to this center position, right? So get it lined up right here, right here. That's why we sewed this first, because we wanted to be able to use the chalk lines for that very first part before he does anything crazy. That way we have really good markings right here, because we sewed all those little ones first, so that there was not too much draw in with the quilt, there wasn't too many problems. Now I could just sew this shape if I wanted to, but I don't. I want this wider part to bring us around. So let's get aligned so we can get to that intersection. Right there is where those two cross over, and then we want the fat part to go out. So just do one side first. Okay, and then you can just scoot it up. Sew the next one. Okay, and then just push that back, and we'll get right back to that last one. always turning it. I want you to be able to see. So we're going to line that center line up right on the existing design where we stopped. And then let's finish this out. Right in the middle. And let's see, did we do, I think we have one more. Oh, we do have one more. Okay, so then put this on, get us back to the center and let us travel over. Right there. And then right up this way. Okay, and then I'm right on the intersection and I'm ready to go. Lining it up. Right to the center. And then I'm on the crosshair line, do the whole thing. Okay, and then scoop back. And at this point, we'll be done, but I want to go back to the center because if we don't, we'll have just one area that isn't all the way stitched back to the center like all the others. Right there, when we stitch back on that last line, we want to make sure that we finish out with that double stitch, just like we did with all the other ones, because they're all full of a lot of thread. Okay, press my button. Let's pull this out of there. So yeah, like I said, there is a lot of thread in the center of this design, but I love it. I still think it looks awesome. I don't care. Lots of thread can be really eye-catching, and it can really bring your eye into the center of a space if you like that. So I actually think it looks awesome. I'll move out just a little bit, give you guys a little bit of a wide view. Are you only doing one side? Okay, so the question was, why did I only do one side? Who knows the answer to that? It's a trick question. That is such a good question to be asking. The reason that I just sewed the one side is if I sewed this back to here, how could I put this in? Right? Because I would be down there. So what I did is I just sewed half. That brings me to here. Then I can fill this one in, and then I can close that one. That is in the interest of making the design continuous. So that's just a decision to move in a way that makes it easier, and then we don't have any double stitching right here. This is just single up to here, do this one, and then single to the back. Okay? And like I said, I know that it is a little busy in the center, but you know, it looks awesome. So I'm good with it. I don't care if it's busy. Okay? I'm not trying to hide anything. That is how it is. And this then fills the square in a more symmetrical way because the Spinifex is kind of round, which means that it will fill this part, but it is going to be then shorter here because this leg is longer. So this would be a way that you could still use the value of that Spinifex in a very unique way, but it's more of a square motif to fill it in. Okay, so let's do something crazy. We've got some really cute triangles here, and I'm just going to mark this line, and we're going to play with my favorite feathers and our Spinifex, okay? And what we'll do is we'll do two designs here the same, and we'll do the opposite design this way, okay? So let's get that marked for you. We'll just use this. All I need is a straight edge real quick to the corner. Right there. Okay. So here, this is whatever. This is the, I guess, quarter square. Yes, it's a quarter square. Okay, because see this size right here of this, which is 1/4, this is the same size. So this right here and this are the same size. That's how we got the square. This distance is what we're looking for. We want to find the Spinifex here that will fill this as good as we can. I think the 7.5 is about the right size to fill that in. But you know, I don't have to know. All I have to do is put it on there and try it. Then I can figure that out without any trouble. All right, so here's my Spinifex. I'll just lay it right on there. And it's going to fill this space pretty good. You know, it's not exceeding the boundary, and it's right on the line, so it's going to fill this pretty nicely. All right. Right there. So I'm just going to get it lined up. Let's pick this up. I'm going to try and get my needle right in the center there. Good, I did it. So I'm going to set the needle very carefully. I want to hold on to that spot, and let's just get these threads out of our way. Okay, so we're right in the center. We're aligned right on that center line. So this is the tallest part of this triangle, and this little point right here should fit pretty nicely then right into that edge, that 90-degree angle right there. So he's going to fill that up and should be essentially half on each side. So let's just sew this. All right, so I only want that as the center. This is that center of the triangle. He's kind of the focal point, and all the rest of the design is going to be built around this shape right now. What I want to do is I want to fill this side and this side with feathers as best I can. So let's just pull out some feathers and we'll start playing with them. I think 5 is the right size. This is a pretty big space to go from here even out to here. That's about 2+ inches, and this is a length of about 2.5 for this feather. So that's how we can choose. Now we have options. We can make our feather go outward like this, curving this way, so that it fills that way. And then when we do the other side, we'll fill them the opposite way. Okay? So right here, I'm going to put this on, and I want to show you what I'm looking at. Sorry, I didn't mean to bump you guys. My camera is bumping around a little bit. Right there, that is what I'm looking for. I want to essentially make my feather fill up this line pretty well at 1/4 inch like this. So as he sews back in, I kind of want to keep that 1/4 inch line right there. Then the other piece is out here, I can touch the edge of the triangle to this opening. Right there, we are coming in a little bit more than 1/4 inch. By using this as the boundary and making the plastic touch the leg of the triangle, we're going to make the feather stitch 1/4 inch inside, which is nice for this symmetry. We don't want this one to touch the line and that one not to, right? So we're going to give ourselves a little space. And here we're going to sew the bottom. So notice that I was touching the feather there on that bottom side. The foot was on the bottom side of the feather, not on the top, which is how I normally do it, right? So it's kind of weird to do it this way. We're going along the bottom. We want to sew in until we touch with our 1/4 inch and then come back around. Okay. And then you can decide, what you want to do, but we're going to just tip this over here, and we can push this out again right here to make him fit. Just so happens that when I do that, look at where I'm at, right? So as I sew this one, I shouldn't have too much overlap, and I should be able to get right into the bottom right there. Okay, so let me show you. Isn't that pretty so far? Now, how do I get over to the other side? Tricky, tricky. Let's put this on here and we'll stitch our way back. Now, if you didn't want to overstitch anything, then you would have to cut your thread. You're going to have to stitch over in order to get over to the other side. Okay? Okay, so we can just line that right there, and we can stitch back this way. And, if that bothers you, you can just stitch this side and then come up to, someplace over here. And then when you come back around, you can stitch this and come back. There's lots of different ways you could play with that, but what I want is I essentially want to get up to this line. So in order to make these a little bit symmetrical, let me show you what I'm going to do. This is a straight line right through the center. So I'm just going to lay one of these straight lines right there until it's touching the top of the feather right there. And I don't care if they're exactly the same, but I want them like a little bit the same, right? Kind of close. So I'm just going to put a little visual reference line right there. This is the top of this feather, which means that when I align the feather on this side, the opening will have to be a 1/4 inch above it because the foot will sink in to make the needle touch right there. So that's just something that we can use in order to help us get everybody tidied up. All right, let's get our feather back out, our Spinifex back out, and we'll sew up to the top. Now I could travel up that if I wanted to, but if I could use my ruler, it's going to be a lot cleaner, especially since it's kind of a long way to go. Alrighty, so let's stick them back on there, get them all lined up nice. What we're looking at is we want that 1/4 inch right there. So we want to make sure we're actually in the stitch line a little bit. So when you first start, just go a little bit slowly. And I'm looking right there, so I want to stop just a little bit before I get to that intersection, right? See how I am right there? I want about the same so that I can align them. And we can take this off. Is that a lot of marking and a lot of work? Not for the design, not if you want what you want. I always think that marking gives you the design that you want. If you don't want to mark, then you need to choose a design that doesn't have very much marking. All right, so let's turn it around. Let me show you that marking again. Remember that we want to sew out and around, so we're going to make this edge touch out there. Let's see, I think we need one more stitch, right? One more. There we go. We're trying to keep this line nice and pretty, and that's going to get us kind of back here a little bit. So I'm going to tip this just a little bit. There's that 1/4 inch right there, and we're touching right there on the outside. And then we'll come back out here. And we can stretch this one out, and we're trying to keep that somewhat same relationship. So we want to touch there, it's a 1/4 inch here, and let's see, we might have to stitch up 1 or 2 stitches to get there. All right, I think I got off my ruler a little bit, but there is our pretty feather, and then I would close this right here, and we can ditch around till we get to the other side. I think I need one more stitch, right? There we go. And then let's tag that in, make sure we're all tied off right there. And we can cut those threads. Anybody have any questions so far? So what do you think? Do you like that? I think that would make a great motif to put like in a corner or something like that. So what I thought we'll do on the other one is we're going to flip that Spinifex around. We're going to use it the opposite way. So I'll mark the center line again for us, and then we'll go ahead and put that in. Okay. So we'll use the same size just to create some unity in the design right there as far as how big they'll fill. He's going to fill right to the same space because distance is the same. Okay, and so we'll line him up down here on this line, and we'll put this guy in right from the top.
asked, how do you manage the chalk lines? How do you get rid of them when you're done?
That's a really good question. I'll go ahead and I'll take them off when we get done.
I don't think they can.
So somebody was asking about removing the chalk lines. So what I'll do is after we're finished stitching a little bit, I'll go ahead and I'll take some of those lines off. Okay, so here, let's go ahead and we'll do this side. And I'm just going to come down a little bit, and we can mark the other side later to figure out where that is. Let's come down to where this curve is kind of in the middle, right there, to right there. And the way that we'll match that is we'll make that center line, so when we sew this side, we'll come down the same amount so we can match it on the other side. Okay, let's take this off. And let's cut these threads since they're tacked in too. And we'll end up stitching over them also, but I usually micro tack when I'm stitching, so they should be fine. Okay, so we're gonna try and flip this around, and we want to fill the feathers into this space. And the goal here is gonna be not just letting them kind of go wherever they want, we're gonna try and fan them like that. So let's see what size we wanna start with. All right, so I don't know, we might have to come down just a few more stitches, I think, to get a good look. There we go. So we can start with this first one, and we can put this one in. He's going to touch right there, but I think it'll be okay. We'll see what it looks like. So right there, and then we'll kind of come to this center position, and then just pivot this like that, and we'll try to use the same relationship right here, keeping them touching right there. And that's what we'll use to make both sides match. We'll touch here, right at the center, and then this is just going to be wherever he ends up. So this is kind of the deep dip, and then just push that up right here so he's touching, and if we can elongate this a little bit, we'll do that. And then this will be the last one that we'll put in on this side. So we're right in the seam right there. Okay, so we've got this fill. Let's flip this around. We'll use our spacing gauge. I think I need one more stitch to get into the triangle. And then we'll stitch right back to the center, and we'll do the other side. So this would be a way that you could work around. So if you wanted to, get back to that same side, okay, so I'm right at where we started, and I can put that Spinifex back on and do the opposite side. I want to keep my same size relationship. Put them on, put my key on. Oh, get in there. Make sure your tape is nice and secure. We don't want that key moving around. So then let's get lined up right here and get my design right where we want them to be. So right here, oh, we forgot to mark that. Let's go ahead and mark that really quick. We'll just put that straight edge in. So this is going to tell us where we start when we want to stitch back down the design to the other side. This is giving us that visual reference that's going to help us make the design pretty much the same on both sides. Sometimes with these designs, symmetry kind of becomes important. It looks a little wonky if we don't have some elements of symmetry. So this way we know where to stop. We're going to stitch back down to the chalk line. Oop, went crazy. Started going back the wrong side. It's going to look a little wonky there. Oh, that's what happens. All right, so we're done with this guy for the moment. So we'll put him back on the ruler rack, get him out of sight. Make sure I can find him later. All right. Let's turn this so we can show that alignment. So that first one is kind of fitting right down to the middle. So let me see, we did it like that. So we'll put this side on. So he's going to come right down to the bottom right there, and we tried to make this piece right here touch right at the center. That was our goal right there. And that'll help both of those sides basically stay the same. Okay, and same thing, then tip. And what you want is touching there and touching right there. We want to push him out to touch the outer edge, and wherever he touches on the bottom, then that's where he touches. And then we sew back to that little dip right there, right here where it curves out, and then we'll do that same thing. We'll kind of push this out a little bit as far as we can. So he's touching here and he's touching right at the center. And we'll put that in. So there's a lot of random rules that we used in order to complete this. And you can make the feathers go whatever direction that you want to go. It's totally up to you. You can stretch them, move them, tilt them. However you want them to go, that's what you should do. And we'll just tie that off right there. All right, let's cut that. So we've got the two different ones, and you can see this is the first one right there. So that's a good visual of that one. Kind of more symmetrical, very roundy on the outside. And then this one, he kind of pushes this straight edge up. It's not quite as full right here at the corner, but you can see it still does have a nice symmetry, and it kind of flowers out from that center. Yeah, there's a lot that you could do with this on paper, and I'm sure you could do this with hearts as well. Hearts would certainly give you some of the similar shape because you kind of get this round and long line to come back to the center. So absolutely, I could see you doing this with hearts, no problem at all. Barbara Guerin asked about the grid glider. So I will take a minute just to talk about that. The grid glider is a frictionless surface. It has microsection technology. What that means is that this actually sticks onto this acrylic surface. You see right now, if I pulled on this, it's holding pretty good. Usually it'll even stick onto this so well that it'll move my machine. Mine might need to be cleaned. Periodically, you're going to get some lint buildup underneath there. Even if you are a clean sewer, that's going to happen just because the lint is occurring underneath this. This center line right here, you can align this right with your center needle position, and you can align this with your center needle position as well. That would allow you to use these different lines to align your fabric. So I like a 3/8 inch binding right here instead of a 1/4 inch. So this little micro dot right here, this is the 3/8 inch line on there. So that's just something that you can use. Plus, let me show you the numbers down on the bottom real quick. See how they're zeroed out in the center? So you can go 1, 2, 3. You can use that to sew down the middle of something. For example, if you had a decorative stitch and you were trying to center it on a back panel or something like that, you could use these numbers and align them and sew right down the middle. And then this is your 1/4 inch on either side. If I'm sewing right here on the 45, I can just ride my square right along that line, and I can just sew right down the diagonal. You just put the edge of your square on that 45, and this is the center line right there. And then the tip of your triangle is right on the 0 line. And as you feed it through, you would have a perfect, let me see if I have a little square. Hey babe, right there on the floor, can you grab some of those little squares that are in there? Perfect, thank you. Awesome. So sometimes we're putting these together, right? And we want to sew along the diagonal and make two little half squares. So I could line this up on that 45-degree angle mark right there in the center. And then this little tip right there should line up right there on this 0 line. And then I would just feed it like this right along with my feed dogs, with my straight stitch, and I don't have to mark that at all. So that is a huge value. I mean, if you're doing like a couple hundred of these and you had to mark every one, oh, torture. And if you wanted to sew a 1/4 inch on each side, then you can align it on the 1/4 inch mark right there. And then that's a 1/4 inch away from the center. So that would give you the two of them. Okay, so lots of great properties with that. We also have the ruler work glider, which has the feed dogs covered except for just the ruler foot opening. And it doesn't have any marking. So if you just want free motion, then you're welcome to do that as well. That would be wouldn't have the markings, but it does cover up this area. So it's a little bit smoother action right underneath the foot. Let's see. So Donna Dean says, do I like using your BSR with your Bernina? Yes, I do. I'm trying to think, can you bring my purple sample right there from my class? Yeah, So this is the class sample that I was using yesterday. And I'm going to put it up here really close, and I want you to see how regulated these stitches are with my BSR. And this is the ruler work right here. Right here. So this is regulated at 2.0, and with the BSR on my Bernina, that means that I can literally dial up exactly the stitch that I want. So I'm going to just kind of scoot you over a little bit right there. We'll kind of try and get the glare out of there. See how that says 2.0? If I change my dial, I can change my stitch length right there, and the BSR then will literally make it exactly whatever size that I want it to be. So if I have little tiny circles that I'm making and I need a really fine stitch length, then I can have that just by adjusting the dial on my machine. Okay, sorry, this isn't supposed to be a BSR class. This is not where I was going. Let me show you something new. One more thing, right? We've done 3 designs. So we did actually 4. We did this center motif, and that was maximizing the spacing of your spinifex to fill up your square. And then this is mixing your spinifex with feathers, and we did 2 different ones. And then this is just a little bit of a different way to make that spinifex work and make it do some different things. These boxes are about a 3-inch square, okay? They're a little bit off just because of my measuring. So I happen to know that they're like 3 1/8 or something like that. When I have the 7-inch spinifex, let me grab that out. And I don't have to guess if it'll fit. I can just put it on there and I can say, oh yeah, it's plenty big enough. But what I want to do is I want to sew the shape, and I want to make sure that it ends at this point. So I'm going to show you this as a path design. And what we'll do for this side is we're going to go to the corner of the box, and then down and up, and to the corner, down and up, to the next corner, down and up, and then I'll show you how we close it on the last leg. And we're making this ruler conform to the shape of this box. This 3 inches, a pretty common size that you might find in quilting. The reason I did not use my 5 1/2 spinifex is why? Who knows the answer? It's math related, dear God, math. This is bigger than 3 inches. The 5 1/2 spinifex is 2 3/4 inches from there to there. So if I use the smaller spinifex, then it won't work for this size square. Would it work for a 2-inch square? Yes, it would. So if you have some 2-inch squares that you want to put a fun design in, then this can work perfectly. Now, when I line this up, I'm still going to line it up right in the wide part right there. But I know that this is bigger right here than a 1/4 inch. So I'm going to make it fit. This is where that spacing gauge is going to be super powerful right here. You want it to touch right at the corner of this square. So this flush edge right at the very tip of that teal, that's where I want my needle to go, right at that intersection. Okay? Check it one more time because it's going to be tricky. Right there. Okay? So fat to skinny right in the box. Okay, this design that I just sewed when I came into this corner, this is the skinny side. So we always want to do the opposite when we put this part in. So now we want the fat part right there because this is the skinny part. So then we're going to partner it up with the fatter part of the template. Okay, and again, getting right into the corner. Try to get right to that intersection right there with your blocks, right? Now, again, we did skinny, okay? So when we go backwards, we have to go fat on that side, okay? So let me show you. We're going to get this kind of cool, wonky design, which looks neat, and then get right into that corner. So this Spinifex doesn't necessarily fit this space, right? He's bigger than that, but we are making him fit. We are making him conform to the design that we want. So skinny on this side. So we'll have to go wide on that side, and then we got to line him up back there. I went a little bit too far, I think. Oh, well, that happens. Getting right back down here. We flipped them around. So we're at the skinny part of the design. So now we'll do the wide part again and get us to the next intersection. Right there, so skinny, wide, and we're measuring that wide on this side right here. It's the side that's opposite of the line we just stitched. So and then flip it around, come back to this one. And then this is skinny, so we want to be wide again. And that'll get us right to this corner right here. Oh, I can't see. So what do you think? Aren't those pretty? They look so good so far, don't you think? I love it. It's such a cool looking shape. And we're not done. We got a little bit more to do. I'm going to turn it so we can get you along the back side. So it's the same relationship, right? This is the skinny part, so now we have to have the wide. We always are going to try to go around and continue that relationship, switching it up from each side. Okay, so maybe one more stitch to get to the corner. So skinny, wide. So look at right here, this is wide. Now the skinny part is going to come right into that intersection. So there is a strong relationship between which side that we're using in order to create the balance of this design. And that's something you do want to follow because that's what's going to create that pretty look for the finished design. Okay, and now we don't have to think about these, right? That's the Let's see, did I do it right? Yeah, okay. I'm crazy. crazy, but skinny, wide, we're doing good. Oh, did you see? I did not have my ruler positioned properly. Check that visually. So we would be able to do this design if you had a bunch of boxes. You could do them in a long, long line of design, and you could just do it in rows. Just like we've done it in these 2 rows, you could just keep doing it in more rows in order to fill in a larger space with this same design. So we'll get right to that intersection right there. We'll scoot down. Same thing right here at the corner. All right, let's see how we're doing. See where we're at. Oh, I love it. So cute. Okay, and then let's think about, this is wide, so we need the skinny neck to go on that side. And get us lined up right to the bottom. Making sure my foot is all the way tucked into that ruler. All right, I'm going to take this off. And then I have one more little thing before we finish with this one that I'll show you some ideas if you wanted to do this. Doesn't that look so awesome? What do you think? I really like it. I just think it has such a cool kind of a, you know, it's not super symmetrical. It's got a little modern oddity to it, but I love it. And it's kind of, the star right here is this piece. So you could fill in the star, or you could fill in this flame kind of a shape, or you could template that. You could cut this out, and then the star will be, you know, whatever the solid is, and this would be your peekaboo fabric. Ooh, it would be so awesome. Okay, now I just want to make it even cooler than it is right now. So just bear with me. Let's put it back on. Because we've just stitched that already, I think that this design would work. What I'm going to show you would work pretty well if you are doing it around a border. If you're doing it as a fill, it would definitely be a lot harder. It would be doable, but it would be harder, and it wouldn't connect as nicely. What I'm going to do at this moment, like this is the border right here, and I'm just going to stitch up a few stitches right in the seam line, and I'm looking for the edge of my foot to touch. You see where I'm going? So my foot now is touching right on the edge of the design, and now I can do this, and I'll get right to the stitch line right there, and I have to stitch across to the other side until my foot is touching right there, and then line this up. This is that 1/4 inch that we're adding just a little bit more three-dimensionality, a little bit more depth to the quilting, and then you would stitch right across your seam line right there until your foot's touching. So you can see this would be easy to do if you were just doing it in this border space like we're doing. This echo would be a lot more difficult if we were trying to do it, if we use this design as a fill. And this design certainly can be used as a fill, but I wouldn't want to put the echo in. I think it would be very difficult to do it and get it nice and symmetrical, because that means like every time in here, if you were trying to echo these, you'd have to travel on the straight line right here. And I think that would mess it up. I think that would make it look not as pretty as it's going to look right now when we're done. So I'm not quite touching. I went a little too far. We'll ditch around that later, so I'm not too worried about extra stitching right there in that line. Here I would want to stitch out and around. Again, till my foot's touching, and then just keep the same shape, pull it down. You're lining it up right there so that it's touching the very edge of the design that you already did. And it's not going to stitch to the corner. it's going to be inside that corner, right? So right now we're in this bottom seam. In order to get to the corner, we'd have to stitch down that seam line like that. And then we'd have to scoot up and go this way until we touch. So right here, when the foot's touching, then we can go back the other direction. So I'm going to turn it a little bit so you can see what I see. Okay, scooting it down, lining it right up on the existing design line. So touch. So could I do this with a square that is bigger than 3 inches? Yes, I can do this all the way up to 3 3/4 because that is the length of this right here. From here to here is 3 3/4 inch. So I could use this anywhere up to that size. Like if you had a 3.5 inch square, this would be the size. If you have a 4 inch, you're going to have to go up to the next bigger size, which is the 9.5, because this won't fill half of that distance. It'll fill, the 9.5 will go, you know, up to 4.5, 4 3/4, right? So that's what you're looking at, is this length from this end to this end in order to see what would fit. Okay, so let's get these lined up. We'll just put these last ones in. And this is also good practice. I'm a big fan of encouraging people to free stitch because I think that you're going to be a better quilter overall if you're not afraid to do that. And the only way to get better at free travel is to actually do it. So you're only doing about 1/2 inch, barely. So this is a good place to practice that. It helps get you better control, and then you're more capable when you're quilting. So I don't have my BSR on right now because this piece is pretty small right here, and that wouldn't really cover up the BSR sensor, which we really need to if we're trying to use that BSR. So let's put the last one in and then we'll be done with this design. So here I'll kind of go down to the end just to kind of close it. Okay, let's cut this. Ooh, you guys, I love it. It looks so awesome. And that gold thread is so pretty on this space. What do you think? Do you like that? It's got a little mind of its own, but I like it. Try to imagine that it's ditched in too, right? That these could be boxes that then we would be ditched. So you'd have a little open space and a little bit deeper. And then, you know, right here, if you are in the middle, you can put that echo in here. If you were doing the echoes in the fill, here's what I was trying to explain that I think it would be a challenge. We would end up there and we would have to stitch on the straight in order to position for a 1/4 inch echo. One thing that you could do in order to make that work without doing that is you could do some jump stitching. You could seat the foot first, right there. Okay, and we'll get the ruler on there too. But I think that if you were doing a large fill, I'm not sure I would have the patience to do this. I might have it, but I do realize there would be a lot of tie-offs and it'd be a lot of work. So you'd have to seat your foot and you'd have to push this down. Here you're going to sew until you're touching the other side, right? Until the foot touches right there. See right here, he's touching. And then you'd flip this, get the other side aligned, and push it down. And then you would sew back to that other start point right there. And you have to make it, oh. My machine just had a breakdown. Oh, darn it, you guys. Something's going on with it. That might be it for today then. I'll have to check it. Maybe some threads caught in there. It was not happy just now. Yeah, it's got some bunky up there. Some thread stuck in there. All right. Well, I'm going to cut it and I'll show you it anyway. Let's just get a couple of these threads out of here because I think you'll still be able to see the idea. So this is what it would be like if you went ahead and you centered this element in the middle there. And what you'd have to do is you'd have to stitch it and you'd have to tie it off. And then you'd have to jump to the next one, stitch the whole thing, tie it off, jump to the next one, stitch and tie it off. So if I was doing a fill in a really large area, I just would not have the patience, I think, to tie off and move. But I think this looks really cool and I would love to do that around the edge. I think it would look amazing. So it's really up to you what you might want to do as far as that goes. And this is just, using a template in a different way, getting some more value out of it. I don't have to use it as a spin effects. If it just has a curve that I like, I can just use that curve however I want to. So there you go. So, okay, let me see. I'm going to take somebody's suggestion. They said restart my machine. That's always something good to do. So I'll just do that real quick. And I'll test it before we do it. I had one last thing I wanted to show you, and I'll do it really fast because my honey is giving me the eyeball because we have family dinner tonight. We have a birthday. Okay, so let's see. It's taking just a second for it to reload, and I'm just going to make sure my bobbin doesn't have any thread in there too. My Bernina is a front load bobbin, and so that is something that is unique about that. So look, it's got some weird bunky stuff going on right there. So I'm just going to take some of that out. It actually had like a little piece of thread that was disconnected from the bobbin, stuck in the bobbin case. So yeah, that happens. I have had every single thing go wrong, just like every other quilter. Doesn't happen any differently in this sewing room than it does in yours. All right, so this is one more of these funny ways to use your tool. And this one is not as precise as the ones that we've shown you. The other ones I think were really easy to manage. This one is a little bit more flexible, but not as easy to manage. So let me just make sure that it'll sew nicely. So we'll just sew down here in this margin, make sure it's not misbehaving. Okay, so we'll just come right over to here. We're going to be in this line. We're again using the same 7-inch template that we just used before, and I like that size. He's kind of working well for what I want. So let me show you the markings on him and what they're for. See, I need my little ruler. Oh, he's way far away. Oh, hang on just a second. Gotta grab him. He fell down. Okay. Can you still hear me? Okay, I took my headset off because I have to plug in. My battery is giving me a warning. Okay. I want to use this template as a clamshell. Can you imagine it? But we can't go all the way down to the bottom, right? The clamshell is based on the widest part of whatever the shape is. So what I did is based on this line down here, I stuck this on here and I measured where the widest part is, like that. So right where that blue line is, this is the widest part of this shape. From this direction, not tall, but side to side. So it's about 2 3/4, right? And that means that when it's sewing, it'll be 2 1/4 from side to side because it's 1/4 inch and 1/4 inch. So the width across is 2 3/4. And we're just going to play with that. So I hope you'll bear with me. Like I said, it's not as precise as some of the other designs, but I still thought that it looked really awesome. And it's a good way to just expand your horizons about what your tools can do to play with it and see if it does something different that you like. So, okay, so the line right there that we have, this blue line, the top one, is the alignment mark. So we're going to line it up basically on the top of this chalk mark because this chalk is pretty fat. And we're going to sew side to side. Oh, okay, let's see. And then just stop when your needle's in line and you just scoot it over. And the reason I say the top of the chalk line is just for consistency. This chalk line is really fat, so our stitch is not that fat, right? It's much thinner than that. So I'm just trying to get it lined up where the needle is right on the top there, and we're on the top of this white chalk line. So based on where the widest part of the template is, there should be no overlap between these designs when we stitch it out. So like right here, when I go to the next one, they should not cross over each other because this is the widest part, okay? So right here, I'm gonna sew this one just like I would if I was on a regular clamshell. So we're down at the base, and I'm actually gonna come up to the top, okay? And now what do? Let's get you a better view, okay? This line is the line that would indicate the top of the next row right here. This first blue line and this one, that would be the same reference line that we would need then in order to sew this next one. So if this is our boundary right here, we want to create a little bit of a visual mark. So let's go ahead and just do that real quick. We want to measure so that we have something on the end that'll be straight. Okay, I'll show you what I'm going to do. Just for the very first one, we're going to kind of create a little straight line. Just lift that up. And I want to put my ruler straight so he's parallel back there. Or if you had something even with a straight edge where you can use markings, let's use this instead. Right? Then I can line this all up so that I know that I can make that straight line right there. And I want it lined up basically at the top of all of the other ones. Okay, and then right here. Just squaring this up so we have a square edge right there to measure against. Because we need to know how to align that straight. I'll show you what I mean in just a second. I say a lot of words sometimes, but without a picture, it's kind of hard. When we line up this template, we need to make sure he's not this way, this way, this way. We want him to be squared up to our existing design. And we don't need that everywhere. We just really kind of need like that first row to get us going. And then we'll have the reference lines that we need. So that little blue line, let's put this foot down, the blue line at the back and the blue line right here, we're gonna sew to this point. He should be aligned right on this center line, and then we'll stitch back. Okay, so let's go back. That's gonna close this side right here, and now we can go the other direction. And now when I flip it around, let me show you what we need to align now. We don't need that line all the way because we have that. This should align right with the tip now of your little guy, and it should be at a 1/4 inch. And I think it is. It's just hard for me to see from this angle, but it is a 1/4 inch already. So that's going to keep all of these aligned perfectly. So he gets right to the center, and then just move this down, keeping this blue line right on the center. And this line right here, he should line up with the top right there of the design, just like this does. You now have this as a visual reference to line up the top of your clamshell. Okay, and then just scoot over, align this and align the tip right there. So he's aligned right there and he's aligned right there. And that makes sure that we're square this way and this way to the existing design. Okay, so we're at the bottom right here. So we have to go ahead and line up for the next one, and we'll do just this half of that in order to get up to the top. So we're aligned here, and the little blue line is aligned right there. We don't really need the reference line on this side anymore because we already have enough reference lines. So we've done some stitching. Let me just show you what it's looking like so far. We'll tip this up so you can kind of get a little visual of it. Can you see? I'm going to just tip it down just a little bit. and we're going to sew the next one. So here we're at the very outer boundary, so just align that top blue line and this blue line, and now we're ready to sew back this direction. Right to the tip, and then align again using this blue line and aligning the needle on that side. Once we get that first one in, all the next ones we should be able to align the top of that right there with this reference line. So as we move this one forward, this line should be aligned right with the tip of that one right there. So we can do a little fudging, but we're looking right there and right here, and that should get us aligned so that we can sew this one in. Okay, and then same thing, just line it up again, this blue line and this needle position right at the top to put this last one in. And I'm right there to the corner. Now I'm at the bottom, and when we're at the bottom, it's difficult to connect to the next one, so just go to the top, and then this is when we'll line it up. And we've got this reference line now to square us up, this kind of a center position right there. So we can just sew the top part. And then let me show you. We're kind of getting out of view a little bit. I'm going to flip it over and we'll just do one last line and then we'll be done for today. This is kind of like a little bit of a, almost like a little curvy diamond or squares. It's got some curvature to it. It does make a really great fill. So I'll just sew this last one. Oh, I went too far, didn't I? I was supposed to go back down to the bottom. So I'm going to get him lined up. I've got to have that top right there. I should be right at 1/4 inch. Right there. I didn't line that up as well as I'd like to, but your blue reference line's right there. And then we should be able to line up with this line right on the clamshell now. Right there. He should be lined up right at the top, and this blue line right in line right there. Okay, and then we'll just keep scooting over. So align right here, right at the top. So we're looking at this line and making sure this blue line is aligned. Those are the two reference lines that we can use to keep us parallel. So you can use some honesty lines if you ever need to kind of get your lines aligned. That's also, something that you can do. But this makes a really cute fill, and it's very relaxing to sew. It's like the alignment's not super complicated, and I was able to do a pretty good size of this design without a lot of fuss, right? So let's take this off. I'm going to show you this real quick, and then we did have that one question earlier. Somebody was asking about removing chalk lines, so I have a couple things I'll show with that, but we'll just do that really quickly. So don't you think that's a really cute fill that you could use sometime? So if you have, something like that, and the fun thing about this particular design is if you have any shape, like if you had an oval and you were using the widest part of the oval, or if you have, something else, like if this right here, you want to use this at the widest part, you could make that into a clamshell just by making sure that you're using the widest part of this. And this one, you could still make this a clamshell, but this would have a little overlap. If it goes back narrower, you could still do that clamshell thing, but you'll get like a little loop-de-loop around the clams. Okay, so let me show you that sample piece that I had for this one. It's just that black piece with the boundary. Can you see if you can find it? It's black. I think it. No. It's right here. Okay, I got it. Sorry, it was hiding. So this is a little bigger piece of that design, just for you to see it, kind of how it would fill up in a little bit larger format like that. And then I'll show you the other one also where I used more lines. So this is the one that uses every single Spinifex, and you can see that the number 5 kind of dips in a little bit more to that center. So this is a little bit more crowded and a little bit more busy. So that's why I decided to take those 2 out right there, is to relieve some of the busyness for this. So this is a Choco liner right here. This is iron off chalk powder. So in order to remove this line, all I would do is just hit it with my iron. Okay, then this is a line that was drawn with my compressed ceramic chalk. That's chalk that looks like this. And the way that this is removed is I would actually have to go back and I would iron it off like that. Not iron it, erase. And this one is a little bit tricky. I would definitely, work a little bit to get that to erase. I usually have a very handy roller that I always have nearby, so I can just get those eraser marks off of there. So, and depending on how hard I want to work, to make sure that there's nothing on there. Is that good enough for me? Yeah, I'm okay with that. But you can erase more if you felt like you really did not want to have any marking on there at all. Let me show you one other one that we had. This line right here, this is my fat Bohin chalk pencil. The way that I get this one off is I just rub it. It comes off so easily, and that is such a big benefit right there. That's why I do use that chalk. It's not very accurate, but it comes off so easily, and sometimes I don't need that level of accuracy, but I need the chalk to come off. So this is just a scrap of fabric right here. Just go like this. That Bohin chalk just gonna come right off like that. Now that ceramic chalk, that's what this is right here. This one doesn't come off nearly as easily, but you can still do that with it. It's still gonna come off. Okay, so that's the ceramic chalk right there, and that's the Bohin chalk right there. Yeah, Jenny mentioned that a dry toothbrush works well, not a used one, one that you bought for quilting only. Put the lock on it and says, quilter toothbrush, don't touch it. Okay, you guys, have a great day. We're going to say goodbye because we got to get going. Happy Sunday. I will be missing a few days in September because I'll be on a trip. Okay, so have a great day. I'll make sure to post the days that I will not be here. Happy quilting. Bye-bye.